Welcome to the greatest podcast in sports betting entertainment. My name is Tanner Kern, certified G, bona fide stud, and you can't teach that. In this right here, this is G Money Grant Mitchell. We are here breaking down everything you need to know in the world of football, and you can't teach that. Bada boom, man of the people in the room. G Money Grant Mitchell, how you doing?
I'm doing very good, Tanner. I'm a few hours away from hopping on a flight, heading out to Colorado to go hang out with my mom for Thanksgiving week. So that's going to be pretty fun. She is a chef, so never a bad person to spend the holidays with.
No, that's always good, Grant. Got to be eating good around Thanksgiving time, watching football.
Are you a turkey guy or are you a ham guy?
Turkey. I don't like turkey, but like that's what I eat. I don't eat ham on Thanksgiving. I think it's weird to eat ham on Thanksgiving. Did the Pilgrims eat ham on Thanksgiving, Grant? No.
What did they eat? Give me the full rundown. Do you know what they ate?
They ate turkey for sure. For sure, because there's turkeys running around. They could just kill them. They ate corn, beans. I want to see. Let's look it up. The Pilgrim Thanksgiving. Because being from the Northeast, Grant, I'm near
This is your area of expertise. This hits close to home.
I was also a history major too. So
you didn't discuss what the Pilgrims ate on Thanksgiving in your classes?
I'm sure we did. I wasn't paying attention too much. All right. Thanksgiving turkey. They ate turkey. They had fruits and vegetables. Makes sense. Fish and shellfish, potatoes, pumpkin pie. So that's what they ate. So they ate a lot of shellfish too, because that's what they had access to.
Does that still happen up in the Northeast?
I'll have a little shellfish. Depends. Depends.
Okay. I've never been to a Thanksgiving where they've had fish.
Well, you got to think too, we do it right in the Northeast because we're near the Pilgrims. Okay. And that's all they had. That's all they had to use the water, Grant.
So do you eat ham on Christmas?
No, I don't eat a ham on Christmas. We do steak on Christmas.
Really?
I like ham. I do like ham, but I think ham's like breakfast food.
See, I think it's at least when I was growing up at our family Thanksgivings and Christmases, I think we kind of always just did ham. Thanksgiving, it was like you have turkey or ham. And because one turkey's not going to feed everybody there because we would have a lot of people. So it was like, take your pick what you want.
Turkey sucks. Nobody likes turkey. Nobody can convince me that they like turkey. It's not good.
So then why are you defending turkey here?
I'm not defending turkey. I'm just defending how it is, like what the Pilgrims did.
Yeah, I mean, turkey, it's literally called Turkey Day. So like, I understand you can't, but turkey is the worst of the major meats, I think.
If there was, let's put it this way, if there weren't sides on Thanksgiving, nobody would eat turkey.
Yeah. What's your favorite side?
I like mashed potatoes. I like sweet potato casserole with the marshmallows and the nuts on top. That's pretty good.
That's the specialty in my family. My mom has a recipe. It's like a secret and she won't tell anybody. And she makes it, but that's everybody's favorite.
Yeah. That's good, Grant. I gotta have some of that if your mom's a chef.
Well, you're not coming out to Colorado, so I don't know how I'm gonna give it to you.
I would come out to Colorado to go skiing. The mountains are open right now.
Well, yeah, I mean, they're open most of the year.
You ski?
Unfortunately, no. It's kind of a waste because my mom does live out there, but she has back problems, so we just never really got into that stuff when I was a kid, so never went.
Gotcha. All right, Grant. Well, we got some football to talk about today, but before we do that, tell them why they need to subscribe to the podcast and check out WSN.com.
Well, I mean, Tanner and I, obviously, we've got our lovely faces in front of the camera, and we're talking about football, basketball, baseball, hockey, the World Cup, Olympics, whatever it is. When it's in season, we're going to be talking about it here. So that's why you want to hit the subscribe button. We're going to be talking about what's happening, the headlines, also give you some betting picks along the way, try to help you make some money. So that's one reason. And then for WSN.com, it's your one-stop shop for everything related to sports betting. If you want to look at previews of games, you want to get the latest and greatest in odds, you want to compare odds, find out who's giving the best deal, you want to get promo codes for sports books, everything you want related to sports betting is going to be there at WSN.com.
Definitely. Well, Grant, it is Tuesday, November 26th, and the New York Giants are an absolute train wreck. That's kind of how that's the deal right now in New York. This team's bad. Malik Nabers came out after the game on Sunday and basically said the loss was soft as shit or something.
He said a bunch of stuff. That was one of them.
Soft as hell. Was it soft as hell, Malik Nabers? I got to get the there were a few quotes that were like really well. Soft as fuck. That's what he said. They asked him, what'd you think of the game? Soft as fuck. They asked him why you didn't get the ball in the first half. He said, I don't know. Ask Dable. Then they asked him like what the problem with the quarterback was, or if the quarterback was the issue. He goes, quarterback's not the problem. Same thing happened today. Basically, quarterback's not the issue. And they said, what's the issue? I think he said talk to Dable. I could be wrong about the talk to Dable part, but I think he said that. For the most part, he went off the rails. And if you're the New York Giants, this is probably not something you want from your rookie receiver who has only played in just over 10 games now, 11, 12 games. So I'd be concerned. Grant, what do you think?
There's definitely reason to be concerned. Now, I will say this fits the star receiver archetype. This is what receivers do. You know, they go to the media and they complain when they don't get the ball. They don't feel like they're getting enough opportunities. So it's kind of par for the course in that respect. This isn't just is what you said, though. You know, we're only 10 games in, 11 games in, however far, and he's making noise. He's been doing this since like week 3 or week 4. This is all he's done. And what you have to think about here is his quarterback right now, it's Tommy DeVito. For most of the season, it was Daniel Jones. He had a better quarterback in college. You know, his teammate was Jaden Daniels, who won the Heisman. And whatever you think of Jaden's performances the last few weeks, we know he's better than what they've got in New York, whether it is DeVito or Daniel Jones. So he's looking at it from the perspective of, I was the best player when I was in elementary school, middle school, high school. When I go to college, you know, I'm playing with the best players. Now that I'm a professional, my quarterback has gotten worse. How's that possible? So I understand his frustrations from that point because he plays a dependent position. He can't throw the ball to himself. So I totally get why he's frustrated. And as far as airing these frustrations publicly, I wouldn't even mind it if he did it, you know, a little bit more subtly. But to go all in and say, it's not the quarterback's fault. Look at the head coach. He is saying he's putting the head coach in the crosshairs. He's saying it's his fault. He's to blame. You need to go talk to him. And that's an issue, you know, especially when that guy you're blaming is your boss. How's this going to go in the locker room? How's this going to go in your meeting room?
Yeah, you're blaming your boss, you're blaming your team, and at one point you're making like $28 million, so you just gotta you almost got to just be quiet. But at the same time, too, you can look at it from the perspective that he is a future All-Pro wide receiver. Malik Nabers is that guy. We've seen it already this season. He's making more than Brian Dable is making, or will make more than Brian Dable is making for a long time, and he's not happy there. So the Giants aren't going to cut him, number one. He was the first-round draft pick. They're not going to trade him. He's the first-round draft pick. And if they did, there would be plenty of people waiting at the door to pick up Malik Nabers. No matter what he says now, it does not matter. They're not going to say he's not a good team guy because you say, hey, we just got to get this dude the ball. So if you bring him to a quarterback that's going to get him the ball, you got to think that he's going to be happy and a good teammate. So it's a really tough situation, but Malik Nabers, they can't really discipline him here because he is the first-round draft pick and he's getting paid all this money. If they cut him, somebody's going to pick him right up, and he probably would be happy about that.
Yeah, and, you know, if you're going to discipline him in the traditional sense of, you know, bench him for a quarter, for a half, for a game, whatever, well, that's just going to make him more upset because he's complaining about not getting the ball. So if he's not on the field, he's not going to get the ball. So I'm with you. Maybe you give him an internal fine or something like that. But all it's going to do is going to exasperate the situation. He's not happy there right now. So it's this fine line. And this is what makes you appreciative of some of the other receivers. You know, like Jamar Chase had a good back and forth with Joe Burrow, kind of, where Burrow is basically saying, like, he knows how to walk the line very well of saying, give me the effing ball without really making too much of a deal out of it. A guy like Justin Jefferson, who you've never really heard complain, a Terry McLaurin, who's like one of the nicest guys in the league. It makes you appreciate those guys because even when things aren't going their way, they're not making that big of a stink about it.
Yeah, definitely. And knowing Brian Dable was just recently named Coach of the Year, and now the Giants are in this position. What do you do with Brian Dable? For my opinion, you need to fire him because he's lost the locker room 100%. And I know he's a good coach, but he's lost the locker room.
This is the thing. They're not going to fire him. You know, they benched Daniel Jones and then released him. Normally it comes down to, do you trust the quarterback or do you trust the coach? They made their decision. And all the reports that are coming out are saying, you know, Brian Dable still has a very good relationship with the front office. They still believe in him as the guy. Now, maybe this is a separate situation to that. It's, you know, they were evaluating it from the perspective of Daniel Jones. Now that Malik Nabers is really frustrated like this, if it does go on to create a problem, then maybe you do have to reconsider it. Not saying a receiver is more important than the coach, because that's usually never the case. But if the receiver is going to kind of drive this divisiveness in the locker room and Dable can't resolve it, then yeah, you might have to move on from the head coach.
I just think the way the season has gone, the way the season's going, and like I know they got rid of Daniel Jones, they benched because they didn't want to pay him, but at the same time, you can't put Tommy DeVito out there and expect it to be better. Like first of all, skipping over Drew Lock as the second string quarterback is a little wild to me because I guess he was never the second string quarterback. You're just putting Tommy DeVito out there as a PR stunt because the agent and get people excited if he can win games. But like the Buccaneers game was nothing. It had nothing to do with like not getting Malik Nabers the ball. It had everything to do with Tommy DeVito had no time in the pocket. The defense gave up. They made a team decision, said we're not playing football today. So like when you put that product on the field, it makes me think like Dable is an issue here because he can't get these guys going the way he needs to. And next season, if you bring in, who are you going to bring in at quarterback? You draft a kid, it's still going to be growing pains.
Well, so I would push back on the idea that Drew Lock was never the second stringer. I think he was. And I think they want to play Drew Lock to win games. I don't think they want to win games. I think they know Tommy DeVito is the worst of their current quarterbacks. So they want to put him out there and lose and get a better draft pick. I forgot where I was going with this.
I do think it's a PR stunt, though, too. I think if he was winning, it would also make people happier. And if he was winning, he'd be the backup. Like if he won games, he would have to be your second string quarterback because of this and all that.
Yeah, I'm 100%. Nabers doesn't want to be there. It's kind of been apparent from day one. His comments about it's not the quarterback that's the issue. He's wrong there. He is absolutely wrong. If he had let's take out Mahomes and Lamar and Burrow. If he had a Herbert, a Tua, a Kirk Cousins, a Dak Prescott, a Geno Smith, like they would be getting him the ball. He would have great production. They would be winning more games. He probably wouldn't be complaining. So he is wrong there when he said it's Dable's fault. Ask Dable, not the quarterback.
Yes and no. I do think, obviously, if he had an elite quarterback, it would help. But their offensive line's bad. Their defense has been bad all season. And then there's been this like negative culture throughout the entire locker room all season. So it's like pent up from frustration. I think if Malik Nabers had 10 catches for 100 yards the other day, he probably doesn't talk out as much. But they're still losing games. And they're still getting their ass whooped losing football games. So it's a balance.
Isn't it wild that Malik Nabers is the best player on the Giants and he wants to be with the Commanders, and Micah Parsons is the best player on the Cowboys and he wants to be on the Eagles? Like those supposed to be rivals, but that doesn't exist anymore.
No, they want to be. Everyone wants to play for like the up and coming, the fun team. And this is a perfect segue into Saquon Barkley, who is now third in MVP odds. And he is the heavy favorite to win Offensive Player of the Year after his big game on Sunday Night Football against the Rams. But looking at Saquon, if you're the Giants, you got to be like, that's another big mistake on the front office. You should have never let him walk. You need to put a contract offer out in front of him that he was going to take and probably not go with Daniel Jones there. And then Saquon with the Eagles has just revitalized his career. He's an even better running back now than he was with New York. The numbers he's putting up, the offensive line he's working with, it really looks good. I don't think he has a chance to win MVP just because if you're going to give it somebody new this year, it's probably Josh Allen. And I still think Lamar's got good value at 3-1. But Saquon Barkley, if the Eagles go on to win the Super Bowl, Barkley's signing was a huge part of that.
There's a lot to kind of break down there. So I'll start with, I think I might have mentioned this on one of the shows last week, but can you imagine if the Giants, instead of signing Daniel Jones, because if I'm not mistaken, they tagged Saquon after they signed Daniel Jones, or they gave him a 1-year deal or something. If they had just moved off from Daniel Jones, signed Saquon, they could have gone in the draft and they had the 6th pick. And instead of Nabers, you would have lost out on Nabers, obviously, but maybe you could have gotten a Bo Nix at 6, a JJ McCarthy, Michael Penix. Obviously, we haven't seen them play, or maybe you trade up to 3. You get a Drake May. So now you're going into your quote unquote reboot with Drake May and Saquon, whereas now you have Tyrone Tracy Jr. and you just released Daniel Jones. Not that Tyrone Tracy hasn't shown something, but you get the point I'm making there. Saquon, this is the best he's looked, and obviously a big part of it is because Philly just has more weapons and a better offensive line. So you're seeing the best of Saquon in a way that you could never see with the Giants. But even still, he's on pace to break Eric Dickerson's single season rushing record. So it's kind of like, I hear you on what you're saying with Lamar and Josh Allen. You still like them more as MVP candidates. And at this current moment, I do as well. But it's like what we're talking about with Ashton Genty with the Heisman. Like, yeah, Travis Hunter's having an unreal season. But if Genty's going to go on to break the single season rushing record, how is he not the Heisman? It's the same thing with Saquon. If he produces the best season a running back has ever produced before, how is he not the MVP? And I think that's a tough argument to be on the other side of.
Because it's a quarterback award. That's what it is.
Well, can you imagine if Jalen Hurts still has more rushing touchdowns than Saquon right now? Saquon has 10, Jalen has 11. Let's just say Jalen kept a few. Let's say Saquon got 8 of those 11. Now, after 11 games, he has 1,400 yards and 18 touchdowns. The fact that the Eagles are so insistent on doing the tush push has kind of robbed us of one of the best seasons an individual has ever had in NFL history.
Yeah, no, 100%. Even though you're giving him the touchdowns, though, it's still the quarterback award. Like that's what this award is. And I'm not saying it's a good, valid argument, but at the same time, too, it's the quarterback award. Quarterbacks win this award. That's why quarterbacks are not listed really in the offensive player of the year category, because the MVP goes to the quarterback. And Saquon has been fantastic. He probably deserves to win the MVP just as much as Josh Allen or Lamar Jackson. And by the way, too, Josh Allen being the front runner right now because of the one good game against the Chiefs, Lamar's numbers have been better than Josh Allen's numbers. So I think that's preposterous that you're putting him at plus 135 and Lamar at plus 300. So it's a really interesting award. It's an interesting award to look at with the odds markets, because from a voter perspective, Saquon might not be plus 650. Saquon might be 10-1 right now. Saquon might be 20-1. You just don't know where people are going to value that running back.
That's the interesting thing with these future markets as well. And we always talk about the volatility of the awards voting markets. I think award voters they don't change as much. Whereas like one good game, one bad game, you'll see a huge movement in odds. But for the most part, like if you're a voter and you've got your top 5 MVP candidates, next week you're probably going to have the same 5. You know, maybe you'll swap one in, one out. Maybe you'll switch 3 with 2. But as far as like the actual odds, those things change wild. We talked about Jared Goff went from, I think, plus 450 to plus 3,000 to plus 600. Like that's a huge change. And that doesn't usually happen in the minds of the voters.
No, not at all. And Lamar had one bad game against the Pittsburgh Steelers. Josh Allen had a good game and beat the Chiefs. Lamar's numbers are still 10 times better than Josh Allen, but he is second on the list because he had one bad game. And if Lamar has a really good game against for Lamar, knowing that we're recording this right before the kickoff on Monday night, if Lamar has a really good game on Monday Night Football, what's going to happen for his odds? Probably going to might pass Josh Allen. You never know.
I hate that Patrick Mahomes is still in the top 5. I just want to say that.
They're terrible. The Chiefs are terrible. They're not a good football team. They're almost lost to the Panthers.
Isn't it fitting that Bryce Young had by far the best game of his career against the Chiefs?
Yeah, I'm a little concerned too about this because being the Bucks guy, do the Bucks even sweep the Panthers? Are the Panthers good? I can't get a read on it.
Well, Bryce Young is actually showing some real improvement. I think a big testament goes to Dave Canales for that, because like Bryce Young's actually playing well. You look at his numbers the last few weeks, it seemed like they were mismanaging his situation. And Canales even kind of threw him to the wolves early in the year. I forget exactly what he said. He said something like Andy Dalton gives us a better chance to win right now or something like that. But Bryce is starting to look good. And yeah, it's only been 3 games or so where you are seeing this improvement. But, 2 of those 3 games were wins. And then the other one was a 3-point loss to the Chiefs. Those are building blocks. You can work with that.
I just don't even know how, like when you look at the box score of this game, I don't know how it was close too. And I know we're getting a little off topic here, but Mahomes threw for 270 with 3 touchdowns. They ran for 165. When you look at the Panthers, they threw for 263, ran for 85. This game was 20-9 going into the locker room. And then the Panthers made it interesting in the end of the game. So I don't know. The Chiefs just seem to let people back into games, which is kind of concerning. But everyone on Twitter on Sunday was like, oh, the Chiefs aren't winning the Super Bowl because of this. Like, Chiefs could very well still win the Super Bowl. They're still beating professional football teams every single week.
And they're 10-1.
Yeah, they're 10-1. So they're finding ways to win. And it doesn't matter if it's the Panthers or the Broncos or a good team. They're still beating teams every week, and they're doing it in the fourth quarter.
Yeah, and they've normally we talk about it's an issue when teams depend on one score games, tying it back into Daniel Jones and the Giants. The year Dable won Coach of the Year, I forget what their record was, like 10-7, 11-6, something like that. I want to say 7, 8 of their wins were one score games, and they didn't lose any of those. And it's like, okay, you're playing a dangerous game here. You're living within the margins, one score games. The Chiefs have done this for so long, and they always win those one score games that it isn't luck. It's they're comfortable in those situations. And when it's time to go make winning plays, they're able to do it. So I look at their close games differently than I do other teams.
Yeah, definitely. Grant, before we move on to college football, right? College football?
Yeah. Big day for the CFP rankings coming out.
We have to do what we do pretty much every week because I want to see if we're going to hit it. And we go through the Tampa Bay Buccaneers win total. And that's set at 8.5 right now. And the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are minus 220 to the 8.5. Looking at their schedule right now, Grant. Now they beat the Giants on Sunday, dominated. They go Panthers. Is that a win?
It should be a sweep, honestly.
It should be a sweep. I'll probably call it a split, but I think they'll beat the Panthers next week. Raiders.
Trash. And Minshew just broke his collarbone. So you're going to get Desmond Ridder.
So you're going to get 3 wins. You're going to get 3 wins. Then you're 1 away going into the Chargers. You're going to get smoked by the Chargers in LA. So you're 3, and maybe not smoked, but it'll be a competitive game. I think they lose that. So now you got 3 weeks to win 1 game against the Cowboys, Panthers, and Saints. That gets them to 7. If they win 1, that gets them to 8. So do they get to 9? I don't think so.
I think so.
You think 9? Okay. This
could be. They need 4 wins from this point on. I got them beating the Panthers in both of them. They beat the Raiders, and then they beat at least one of the Cowboys or the Saints. They might win both.
Okay. They're going to the playoffs then, Grant. If that's your mindset, this team's a playoff team. But you know who's not a playoff team, Grant?
Who's that?
Alabama and Ole Miss. Jackson Dart. First, before I even get to Jalen Milroe, these men busted every single parlay possible on Saturday for me. It was like, oh, Jackson Dart lost. Okay, I'll just throw Alabama in a parlay. Why not? Get a little extra love there. Then Jalen Milroe decides to throw it to the other team. He forgets what color jersey he was wearing. But let me start with Jackson Dart. Jackson Dart hurt his draft stock a lot, not only because of the interceptions he threw him, because he would go to the bench and cry after every damn interception he threw. That was a terrible performance. They should have easily won that football game. Not LSU. Ole Miss had every opportunity to beat Florida in that game. Lane Kiffin, you were an idiot. He gave up. He went every time it was 4th and 1, and they got stopped, I think, 3 or 4 times on 4th and 1. Every single time you bring in a 300-pound defensive tackle on 4th and 1 to run the ball, everyone in America knows what you're doing. Why are you doing it? Jackson Dart, did you watch this game, Grant? Please tell me you watched this game.
I was getting bits and pieces of it. I was in the quad box.
The Ole Miss equipment staff should all be fired because Jackson Dart's helmet popped off 15 times, and he missed key plays 15 times in the football game. Then the interceptions at the end. Throw an interception. Oh, it hits the ground. We get another chance after he's crying on the bench. He goes back out and throws another interception. Jackson Dart should be ashamed of himself. Ole Miss is not good because of their coaching. I'm not even putting it on Jackson Dart. But Ole Miss, coaching-wise, Lane Kiffin coached them to a loss many times this season. He's done it over the course of his career. Now let's move on to Alabama. Kalen DeBoer does not know how to win a road game. Kalen DeBoer is not ready for the SEC. He has lost 3 big road games, and they were all winnable games. That's a problem. Jalen Milroe has never been a good quarterback. He can only throw a deep ball and run. And if he can't do that, he can't sit in Kalen DeBoer's offense and pick teams apart. He's not Michael Penix. That's a problem. This is a travesty that both these football teams were beaten as 14-point favorites, Grant.
It's a travesty, and it's also hilarious because it has created utter chaos for the rankings committee. And I'm so excited to see when these rankings come out later, what they actually look like, what the projections are, because going into the week, let's talk about the teams that either we thought were going to make it or were projected to make it. What am I saying? Boise State, BYU lost, Colorado lost, Ole Miss lost, Bama lost, Indiana lost, Army lost. So many teams that were projected to make it or right on the edge of that just spit the bit. Like they just completely choked. And it is, again, it's created one of the craziest scenarios that we've had in I don't know how long in college football.
I truly believe if Ole Miss and Alabama win on Saturday and they do it in pretty decent fashion, Indiana doesn't get in. If Ole Miss and Alabama won,
okay,
I believe that Indiana was going to drop out. Indiana would be the last team out.
So this goes to, I love Kirby Smart. I hate the way that he addresses the rankings. I do understand his frustration because he feels like Georgia has earned a certain level of respect, and they have. But he said that, if you're gonna, how are you gonna take away from our resume because we lost to an Alabama, because we lost to an Ole Miss? Basically saying like they're quality losses. How does that make us worse than these other teams? The thing with Indiana is they didn't beat anybody, but their only loss was on the road to the number 2 team in the country. So it's like, how can you judge them too harshly for that? And Indiana's defense, the final score is ugly. Don't get me wrong. Indiana's defense was great in that game. It should have been 7-7 going into the fourth quarter. There were just 2 special teams. There was a punt return touchdown, and then the Indiana punter dropped the snap and fumbled it at his own 7, and Ohio State scored. So without those, it's 7-7 going into the fourth quarter at Ohio State. So I think it is possible what you're saying. I think it is possible, but I don't think it should have been a foregone conclusion. I think Indiana still is not getting the respect they deserve.
No, but when you play the 106 toughest strength of schedule in the country, and Georgia has the toughest schedule in the country, and Georgia's a 2-loss team and Indiana's a 1-loss team now. Georgia's a better football team than Indiana. Georgia will beat Indiana in the college football playoff if they play each other. That would be a massive upset if Indiana was able to win that game. So I agree. They're doing what they can do based off their schedule, and it's hard to leave a 1-loss team out. But a 2-loss SEC team, and even a 3-loss SEC team in some cases probably is better than a 1-loss Indiana that has the 106 toughest strength of schedule. That doesn't mean the 3-loss team should get in, but I understand what Kirby Smart's saying when he's played just a gauntlet all season. Like Texas has not played a gauntlet. Texas has had a very easy schedule.
Texas is the Indiana of the SEC.
Of the SEC. And people
Texas
think
has played one SEC team with a winning record.
Yeah. And it was Georgia at home.
Or sorry, okay. They might have played.
They haven't gone on the road. That was the thing. They haven't. I don't think they've played a team with a winning record on the road in the SEC. I saw some graphic on Twitter the other day.
Let's see. I got their schedule right here. So they lost to Georgia, which we know, and then does Vandy have a winning record? I think Vandy is the only SEC team.
They're 2-2 in the SEC.
They've beaten Vandy and they've beaten Oklahoma. So Oklahoma didn't have a winning record until last week. So
yeah.
Anyway, their best wins are against Vandy and Oklahoma, which aren't great wins at all.
No, and they'll smoke Texas A&M this weekend. So that won't be an issue for them. Now, the question is, if Texas A&M, like this would be the ultimate chaos. Now looking at this week for an Alabama to get in, and we don't know the ranking yet because they come out on Tuesday. But looking at this, Texas A&M needs to beat Texas, but then Texas A&M gets in.
If Texas A&M beats Texas, that means Texas. I think Texas is no longer in the SEC championship game, and I think that means Texas misses the playoff.
You think would they put a 3-loss Bama in over a 2-loss Texas?
Well, they would have to put Georgia and Tennessee. And then
Tennessee's already in. There are Georgia, Tennessee already in.
Yeah, and then I think A&M might get in over Texas if they beat them in this game.
Yeah,
even though they will have one more loss. Again, Texas's best wins are against Vandy and Oklahoma, which aren't great wins, and they got annihilated by Georgia.
Yeah, definitely. Alabama right now plus 220 to make the college football playoff. Is there a world where Alabama makes the college football playoff?
Well, I think you need A&M. You need A&M to beat Texas because right now Texas is kind of auto locked in. If they lose, then that creates a scenario of chaos. And then, I mean, Georgia's not losing to Georgia Tech. Tennessee's probably not losing to Vandy. I guess it's possible. Like Vandy has been competitive, but I don't think it happens. So, no,
SMU or Boise State need to lose.
Well, if Boise State loses, it doesn't matter because they're just going to put another G5 team in.
Yeah.
But yeah, SMU, Miami, that's what it might come from. It might come from another conference losing a spot.
Well, because if SMU, Miami are going to play in the ACC championship game, if say SMU lost this week, I don't know who they play. Let's see. SMU plays California this weekend. So if they lost to Cal and then lost in the ACC championship game, they would be out. If they lose in the ACC championship game, they're still in, I would say, with Miami. But yeah. There's a world where Alabama gets in. It's very slim though.
Yeah, and so to go back to your thoughts on Kalen DeBoer here. So I've been extremely high on Kalen DeBoer, really for the past few years, and I trust him to make a lot of improvement in the offseason, and I trust him to come out swinging next year. The thing that he's going to have to learn, and it's what you said, is he's going to have to learn to play in the SEC. And let me just run through the schedule here. He's won all of the big games, and that's what he is a national champion at Sioux Falls, made a national championship at Washington. This is what he does. He knows how to get to the big game. So his first game in charge of Alabama, they win 63-0. Okay. The next week, pressure's off. The final score, they beat USF 42-16, but they were losing in the fourth quarter. It was almost a disaster. Wisconsin, who cares? Georgia, you dominated them. You're up 28-0 at the end of the first quarter. That's awesome. There's no more pressure. You lose to Vanderbilt. Okay, then you've got to bounce back. It was an ugly game, but you beat South Carolina. Then you lose to Tennessee. All of a sudden, your playoff hopes are on the brink. You need a win. You beat Mizzou 34-0. Then you go to Death Valley, you smoke them 42-13. Mercer 52-7. Now it's like, wow, Alabama, if they win out, they're in the conference championship. They're pretty much a lock for the playoff. You score 3 points against Oklahoma. So this is the problem. He's got to learn that every game is a big game. You can't just key in on a couple in the middle of the schedule. You got to be ready for every game.
Yeah, I think they thought they were coasting the college football playoff. In the end of the day, Oklahoma, you gave Oklahoma 2 touchdowns and you didn't score a touchdown. So that's a game you should never lost. And I don't know if they should have been a 14-point favorite, but they should have been a heavy favorite in that game because they are clearly the better team. They just weren't ready to play football. That's unfortunate. I think you can make the case for Ole Miss with Florida that Ole Miss coached themselves out of a win there, but Florida's also starting to find themselves a little bit. Ole Miss never found themselves. Like, you allowed Ole Miss to find themselves in this game. Florida's starting to play a lot better football. So, I listened to Josh Pate talk about this. You got SEC teams. Every team has SEC talent. Now, when you start, some teams start slow and then they find themselves later in the season, they're still SEC talent. So then you get a team on the rails at home. That's why it resulted in a win. But for Ole Miss, they coached themselves out of the game. Alabama never showed up to their football game. And that's the biggest concern with Kalen DeBoer. And the Tide, I don't know if you've been reading Twitter, Grant, but the Tide fans want Kalen DeBoer out. They don't like him one bit.
They've got to dial it back. Like, let's relax. We're a month and a half away from him again smoking Georgia. Okay, he was the next
smoke
best
Georgia.
thing.
No, he did not smoke Georgia. Georgia won that football game.
They were up 28-0 after one quarter.
When you at home, number one, when you look at how the game ended though and how it finished, Georgia won the football game. I walked away from that game saying Georgia, if they played Alabama again, they would blow Alabama off the field. That's what I
walked away. We talked about this actually, I think, on the last show. I walked away saying that's a feather in the cap for Kalen DeBoer because both teams were coming off a bye and Kalen DeBoer's team came into that game far more prepared. Now, I think you can say there's a combination of Kirby, making the better in-game adjustments. And also, I think Bama kind of just took their foot off the gas and they played not to lose versus playing to win. So I think that did play into it, yes. But you have to give them credit for what they did to start that game.
I give them credit for how they started. I give a lot of credit to Georgia for how they finished it too. The way Georgia finished that game was just as impressive as the way Alabama started, because they took advantage of Carson Beck turning the ball over, and then Carson Beck was playing freaking Madden, throwing the ball down the field the rest of the game. So it's the balance there too. Both, you can give Alabama credit for how it starts, you give Georgia credit how it finishes, but you always remember how it finishes more than how it starts. And Georgia finished stronger.
So I'm gonna go through teams I think are in the playoff as of today. This is not projecting. This is where we're at right now. Okay. So I think I have 10 teams of the 12. So I've got Oregon. If I say something you don't agree with, feel free to jump in.
Yeah.
Oregon, Ohio State, Texas, Notre Dame, Georgia, Tennessee, Miami, SMU, Indiana, Boise State. So that's 10. Yeah. I did not say Penn State because I think
they're in.
Are we going to put Oregon, Ohio State, Penn State, and Indiana in? I don't think we are.
I think we are, now that the SEC decided not to play football.
So you think there's going to be 4 Big Ten teams in?
And that's a shame. That is a shame, because the only team, like Oregon, Ohio State, are much better than Penn State and Indiana. Indiana, the bracket that I'm looking at right now, the projected bracket, Indiana plays Georgia, and then the winner goes to face Oregon. That's a tough deal for Oregon. I'd rather lose in the Big Ten championship game and get to face the Boise State in the first round, then go face Arizona State in the second round, then have Georgia come to town after beating Indiana.
And I mean, I guess if I mentioned Indiana, I guess if I do that, it's kind of unfair to leave Penn State out too. So I don't know. Maybe you're right.
You have to put 4. Then it's the fact that off the current bracket now, there would only be 3 SEC schools in, is not current bracket, but projected bracket, 3 SEC teams getting in. It is a shame, because the SEC plays the toughest schedule in the country. And I think if you put the top 4 SEC teams against the top 4 Big Ten teams, I think the SEC is winning more of the games. But 4 Big Ten teams is a little crazy. But I also can take it from the perspective that Oregon's not really a Big Ten team. Like, Oregon moved into the Big Ten this year. They're not a traditional Big Ten team. So you can make that argument too. I think the bracket's right. I hate that. Again, if Alabama and Ole Miss deserved to not get in, because they had every opportunity to get in, they just had to win out, and they didn't do it, and they were heavy favorites.
So if we put Penn State into those teams I mentioned, we're now at 11. Obviously, the 12th team is going to be the winner of the Big 12. Over there, it's Arizona State at the top, BYU, Iowa State, Colorado. Colorado, I think, it's not over, but they need a lot of things to break their way. And then they need a lot of things to break their way to get into the conference championship. And then they need to win the conference championship. I don't know who you like out there. Arizona State's probably playing the best out of the bunch. I think BYU might probably still be the popular choice, though.
So right now it looks like Arizona State, Iowa State would be the title game.
Oh, it really? Okay.
No, did BYU beat Iowa State?
Let's see. Iowa State has not played BYU.
So the way that it looks like it would be Iowa State, Arizona State right now, but I could be wrong about that. I'm just looking at the standings. If that was the case, I'd probably say Arizona State. Again, I like Arizona State's head coach. I think he's awesome. I don't know if they're going to do anything. Like, that's where it goes off of. I know everyone wants to play in the SEC, but you got a better chance of making the college football playoff if you go play a Big 12 schedule and get a first round bye. That's the hard part about all this. Like, all the good teams from the Big 12 came to the SEC.
So just to run through it again.
Yeah.
We've Oregon, Ohio State, Texas. We'll put Penn State in there. Notre Dame. That's 5.
Yeah.
Georgia, Tennessee, Miami, SMU, Indiana, I guess maybe is a question mark now, but that's 10. And then we've got Boise State in the Big 12 champion. Those are the 12.
Yeah, right now.
So pretty closely aligns with the AP poll. I'm very interested to see what happens with Indiana, Penn State, and then a potential 4th SEC team, because Penn State is 5th in the AP and Indiana's 10th. But their seasons have been pretty similar, and Indiana's been more dominant. They both have 1 loss. It was to Ohio State Indiana's was on the road. Penn State's was at home. I don't know how much that factors into this here.
Now, you know what, though? You got Michigan, Ohio State this weekend.
Yeah.
You never know. Like, that's a rivalry game. Anything can happen. If Michigan beats Ohio State, does Ohio
State's
State
out?
Ohio State's probably out. Yeah.
And then Indiana has Purdue. So they won.
Oregon has...
It doesn't matter. If Oregon loses, they're still fine. They got Washington.
They're still fine.
Washington's actually a sneaky... Washington's a very good upset team. Like, they're not great, but they'll cause problems. But
Penn State has Maryland. Don't be surprised if that game's close either.
Agreed.
Don't be surprised. I mean, Penn State almost lost this past weekend to Minnesota. So don't be surprised if Maryland's a good football team. They're a strong football team.
Penn State needed a fake punt in their own half to kind of save them.
Yeah. So should be interesting, Grant. We'll see what happens. Even though Maryland, 4-7 rivalry game against Penn State on the road, it's going to be an interesting game. So I don't think Penn State will blow them off the field by any means.
I agree.
But anyways, Grant, that was a Ride the Line. We're riding today.
We were riding. We're riding into the next CFP rankings. And if you guys want to hear our thoughts on them once they're released, plus some more look aheads to the NFL weekend, hit that subscribe button. Tanner and I are going to be back here later in the weekend. Also, check out WSN.com if you're interested in anything related to sports betting. Make sure you hit the subscribe button. Tanner and I will catch you all in the next episode of Ride the Line.